We all good to go? You good to go?
Excellent, beautiful people out here.
I know. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, the Minister for Environment and Climate Change, Minister Bernie Davis, to provide an update on the province's wind development process. In April, I announced that we were lifting the moratorium on wind development in the province, creating an opportunity for industrial customers to generate wind energy for their own consumption and wind generation for export. I noted at the time that this new industry would require the development of policies, and I committed to provide regular updates on this multi-step process. Today, we have taken another step forward. After engaging and receiving feedback from multiple companies, and to ensure a fair and transparent process for all interested parties, I am pleased to announce that beginning today, our department is issuing a call for the submission of nominations of areas of interest for wind energy projects in this province. This call for land nominations is open for any available Crown lands within the province. There is no limit on geographic size for any given submission, nor is there any limit on the number of submissions. A guideline document is now available on our department's website. Nominations will close on October 1st, and we will then review and analyze the land that companies have expressed interest in. While nominations are open, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro will be completing their wind integration study, which will assess the amount of wind generation that can be supported by the electricity grid in a range of forecasted scenarios. These results will be shared with companies and made public to ensure proposed projects are technically viable before the call for land nomination closes. Now, I know there are many questions from interested companies, from communities, from individuals, and we will continue to be transparent as we roll out this multi-phase approach. And as we go through it, we'll be working alongside other departments as well as industry. In late August, we will be hosting a Crown Land Nomination Information Session to answer questions that interested companies may have. Now, that's not to say that we will not continue to be available day to day, as we have for the last number of months, for people as they go forward with questions and queries. This approach gives us an opportunity to have ongoing constructive conversations with proponents, communities, and residents. Wind development in Newfoundland and Labrador provides us an opportunity for economic development and for job creation. We know the majority of jobs in this industry occur during the planning, development, and construction phase, but is also supplemented by jobs during operation and maintenance. The number of jobs depends on the projects that get approved through the process, and obviously this will be an important part of the bid criteria that is currently being developed. Our department has been working hard to understand the needs of a wind industry and to ensure that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have the training they need for this growing renewable energy sector. Following government's assessment of nominations, the province will determine what land will be made available for a first round of the competitive land bid process. We will also be reviewing our legislative framework to ensure that it is the right fit for Newfoundland and Labrador, and that, again, we are guided by the need to ensure a fair, transparent, and competitive process. Our goal is for the next step, the call for bids, to be launched by mid-December. This will not operate on a first-come, first-served basis or simply the highest bidder is best approach. An evaluation of bids will take place with a best value approach. Criteria for this is still being worked on in this multi-step process, and I'm sure I'll get questions on that. I'll be happy to talk a little more about that. Now, while we work on ensuring this fair and competitive call for bids, we're also working on a fiscal structure for wind projects to ensure we maximize benefits for our residents for the use of our natural resources. We're taking this one step at a time, and there will be more information on the competitive land bid process available in the coming months. Now, we know some companies have already submitted a request for Crown lands for wind development. No Crown land applications have been approved. Applications will be returned, and we obviously welcome these companies to participate in this nomination and bid process. Companies who do not submit a land nomination will still be eligible to submit a bid for land when that process begins. This process was informed by lessons learned and a study of how other jurisdictions obtain value from their wind energy projects. Traditionally, The majority of jurisdictions have developed wind industry with the goal of greening their grid to meet local renewable energy targets and have subsidized wind development to do so. Our grid will already be substantively carbon neutral. Our goal is to pursue this as an economic development opportunity. And with the growing global green hydrogen and ammonia markets, jurisdictions are seeking opportunities throughout the world, and we have been recognized as having a tremendous resource. We are taking a balanced approach to how we are rolling this out. The approach is timely, and I'd like to think that we are trying to expedite it because we want to be first into this emerging market, or certainly near the top. But we also know that we have to get it right at the same time. It has been a fine line. We recognize that this resource and these opportunities belong to the people of the province, and we must ensure that the decisions that we make now are in the best interests of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians now and into the future. I believe this step today is certainly a positive one, is laying the groundwork for a process that I think will be successful. Again, I reiterate, it is a fair and transparent and competitive process that we're creating, and we will continue to keep the public informed as we make our way through this multi-step process. On that note, I'd like to thank you all, and I'm going to turn this over now to my colleague, Minister Davis, to take some questions from make some notes from the environmental perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Parsons, and what a day to talk about wind development in this province, at least here on the East Coast for sure. I'm happy to be here to discuss the wind development process in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm very pleased to see the development of an alternative energy source in our province. The level of interest for our wind and hydrogen energy potential is indicative of the vital role that we can play in the global transition to a green economy. Technologies such as these will be instrumental in ensuring a sustainable future for our province and indeed the entire world. As the Minister responsible for Environment and Climate Change, I can assure you that all proposed projects will undergo the province's comprehensive and vigorous environmental assessment process. Environmental assessment is a parallel process to the bidding process announced here today. In other words, in order to proceed, a company must complete the environmental assessment and be successful in the bidding process. As with any project, companies can choose to register their project at any time, provided they have the project and a registration document that meets the criteria outlined in the Environmental Protection Act. The purpose of the environmental assessment process is to protect the environment, the quality of life of people in the province, and to facilitate wise management of our natural resources. It is a legislative process conducted under the Environmental Protection Act and the Environmental Assessment Regulations. The process is consultative. It provides public an opportunity to review registered projects and submit questions, comments, and concerns to the department. Once a project is registered for environmental assessment, the information about the project, including the project proposal, is posted on our website, the Department of Environment and Climate Change, and it is available for public comment. Additionally, 24 federal and provincial government departments and agencies review the project to provide scientific and technical advice as well as recommendations. All input, including feedback and comments, is considered. We welcome all public input into the environmental assessment process, and I encourage people to visit the Environment and Climate Change website to submit comments on any project registered. And I'm sure that we'll have an opportunity to have some questions and concerns addressed here today, and I turn it back to Minister Parsons.
Thank you. Prior to opening it up for questions, I did want to take an opportunity. The amount of work that has gone into establishing this, whenever you're talking about a nascent industry, something we've never done before, has been substantive. So I just want to throw a shout out to Susan and to Christine, John, Craig, Kellyanne, Eric Tansey, Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, Bernie's department, FFA, a lot of people. I don't think people truly realize the amount of effort and research that has gone into this, and these people are generally behind the scenes. So throwing a shout out to them. We get to talk about it here today, but they do a hell of a lot of work. So on that note, I'll stop and I will open it up for questions.
How many firms have already made Crown Land applications?
I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly because I'm not necessarily privy to that. I know there are at least one or two, I believe. But I absolutely would not have that information, not being responsible for Crown Lands.
So for a project to proceed and get to the land bid process, it has to be land that was nominated. Is that right?
Yes. So what's going to happen here? So starting today, and I would advise everybody, I mean, this is the guidelines here, it's available. So this is going to lay it out, just how this is going to work or how we see this working. From today until October 1st, that's your opportunity to apply for the expressions of interest for the land. Again, you're going to put forward some information. It's more of a high-level application laying out background information, and again, it's all contained in there. So company name, expertise, a number of things, as well as the parcel or parcels of land that you're interested in. From that, we will then take the information after October 1st and figure out where we want to go in terms of putting parcels of land up there for mid-December. Similar to what we do with the offshore, where the parcels that are put out are done in consultation with industry. You're not just going to put out a pile of land that nobody maybe has any interest in. But we also felt, again, we've been hearing from companies for some time, but now we're doing it in a formal way where everybody's on the same footing. So yeah, again, I would advise companies to, and again, if you don't want to put anything forward, that's fine too. You also will have the opportunity to still bid later on. But again, the guidelines are there, and I think all along our department's been extremely helpful and responsive to working with companies to try to explain. And again, this is extremely new to us. We have looked at jurisdictions through Canada, US, and the world, so it's not like we're not looking for best practices elsewhere. We have done that.
In regards to this process, would you say this is the first step of the process, or where are we in the process with this, and how important is this step?
This is absolutely, in my opinion, the most important part, because when we announced our intentions on April 5th, biggest conversation we've had with interested companies and proponents is lay out the plan, lay out how we become a part of this. And so now we are doing that. Everything will be known so that people can move forward in an official capacity. And there's a lot to this. Companies, I mean, doing this is going to be capital intensive. Companies are going to have to figure out the financials, the feasibility, and there's more information to come. Let's not think that there will not be work being done on the side of this. As I mentioned, Hydro is still working on a resource adequacy study that has to be put out. That's going to be important for companies prior to October 1st. They're doing a wind integration study that has to be put out. So everybody's all hands on deck moving this thing forward. But again, given what I've heard from companies, they're ready to move, I presume. And again, I will leave it to these companies to, discuss where they are. But I think you'll hear a lot more now publicly now that the process is announced in public.
Given that companies are able to, through this process, eventually produce wind energy for their own consumption, is there worry that that could reduce industrial demand for energy from Muskrat Falls, for instance, and have an adverse effect on ratepayers?
So this process here is primarily for those that wish to generate wind energy. We're still talking about the possibilities of grid integration as something that happens, but primarily what we are hearing from is companies talking about export through ammonia, talking mainly Eastern Seaboard, Europe, and wherever the market goes. We still do have companies that are discussing wind generation for their own uses. We've already had companies, whether you talk about what's going on in Nain, we talk about what's going on up in Boise. So that's an ongoing conversation. Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we have to be concerned with energy usage and how that works. But that will be outside of this. This is mainly for, I think, an export opportunity scenario.
Is familiarity with the offshore like a driving factor in having a system that kind of mirrors what we already do there?
I think that it's been extremely helpful knowing that we have had an offshore industry for a number of years with processes laid out with players and partners that understand how this works. And the driving factor in that has always been value. And now in that case, we talk about a high bid. This is a bit different. This is a beginning industry that if you look elsewhere has not exactly, it has had to be subsidized. And most jurisdictions have done this for the purposes of weaning themselves off diesel and getting into the renewable side of things. Obviously, we think we're advanced there. We're going to be hopefully 98%. And again, we're still talking those opportunities off-grid up in Labrador and whatnot. But this, we see right now, the interest we have coming from outside the province, primarily from the German consulate, the German embassy. What we're seeing is making a lot of companies think that there's a feasible market for hydrogen development, for export. I mean, we're closer to Germany than we are British Columbia. So right now we are in a very strategic location. We've got the things that you need for this, whether it's the deep ports, the available crown land, the hydro, the electricity opportunities, And I think being small and nimble, knowing the relationship we have between our departments working together, between our business community, between Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, we have a department that is second to none when it comes to responsiveness. I'd put them up against any provincial government in this country. And, you know, I take certain pride in it from the hard work that they do. So, again, I come back to the fact, though, that all that combined with the fact that we have been doing this in some way, shape, or form, and there's a lot of players that have gone down this road already. Scotland, if we want to look at New York, we want to look at Ontario, we want to look at BC. There's plenty of examples. This industry's been on the go for decades now. It might be, and it's not even new to us. We've had this here in Newfoundland and Labrador for the last decade. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but you look at that beautiful picture there, which is from Ramia in my district. I've seen wind towers since I've been going down there for a decade.
Except
Nothing new.
Those don't work, though.
What?
Those aren't functioning.
Not those right now, but the other ones do. And those are soon going to start working again.
Can I ask about, Mr. Davis, about the current environmental assessment process happening on the West Coast? Is it still your intention to make a decision by August 5th on that project?
That is our intention, yes.
I asked because there are a number of people on the West Coast who said, you know, we found out about this at the very last minute. There's a group that just went to visit a wind farm at the behest of the company. Was there consideration given at all to extending the timeline there?
There's a legislative process that exists for environmental assessment that every, not just large-scale wind project, but every project that meets criteria have to go through. And this is the process that we live in right now. The registration period is 45 days, 35 of which are public consultation. So that's the same for everyone. Then if there's further information that's required, it'll be moved to you know, further assessment if that's required. And all of those things are legislatively guided and done by a exceptional staff like Minister Parsons had mentioned that we have there. And just to reiterate the previous question, I mean, we've done environmental assessments for 3 decades now. So, I mean, we are good at what we do with respect to that, so it's an important piece that everyone got to understand that we have our primary interest as the people of the province and the environment we all share. So, I mean, that's our primary focus, and any information that we would require would come through that process. And that's why we have 24 agencies and departments, both federal and provincial, that come into this, feed into this process.
If I could jump on that just for a second, just to provide something I've been wanting to say for some time. I mean, number one, when it comes to our department, just about any side of the industry part, of the technology part, the reality is most of these projects have been going through EA in some way, shape, or form. So it's not a new concept. I think the issue here, though, is that the way that this has gone about, I haven't been able to talk about details. It's been hard. I have gotten the emails from citizens. I'm sure Bernie has as well. I've gotten letters from certain mayors, and it's hard to talk about a process that we haven't announced. So one of the big things that comes with this is the ability now for an education side, for a conversation side. So yeah, I'm going to meet with, if communities want to meet with me, I'm going to meet with them. If we want to talk to citizens, because with the void of information, or if they're only getting information from an interested proponent, the reality is that they haven't had all the questions. Nobody has been able to answer all the questions because nobody's known the process till today. So hopefully we will be able to help with this. It's new here. It's not new elsewhere. There's lots of past precedent elsewhere to show that this industry is a positive thing, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't answer valid questions as it relates to the process in terms of wind turbine placement, in terms of how does this affect Crown land, what is the effect on the environment. All valid questions. Now we can begin the information and education stage, I think.
Minister, you know, you said this is a crucial step, I guess, in this process. Wind energy, where do you see the industry going in regards to maybe the value monetarily to the province?
Still really early to tell, and I certainly wouldn't want to put up expectations that are astronomical and can't be reached, nor do I want to put something that's low. The reality is that this is what's going to come about, but we're moving this in, I think, as fast as we can. It's sort of a haste versus caution thing where we both are important. We want to be first in here because the competition is significant. Our next door neighbors in Nova Scotia are wanting to move this forward as well. So what I would say is that we know when it comes to some of the studies we've seen, the construction side of things, 84% of the work comes in that, and that's what we get from studies that we've seen. But again, it depends on size and scope. You know, is it 200 megawatts versus a gig? All this will make a difference in how this goes, and we're still working on the fiscal structure because we need to make it attractive for investment, but at the same time realizing this is a new industry that's setting up. So there's still a lot of that behind the scenes work that's being done, but we will be aided by resources to get us there in a timely fashion, and again, keeping the industry consultant, working with them, and at the same, like, everybody needs to be on the same playing field and understand where we are, but that doesn't mean that we are completely through where this is. That being said, when I hear from other countries talking about how they want to get offtake agreements, how they need to move away, how the energy, the tumultuous time that we face with energy in this world right now, the fact is other countries are moving and moving fast, and we need to move fast in such a way that companies can avail of this and we get the benefit for our citizens and figure out how to do this right.
When do you expect to make a decision on bid criteria?
That will be put out prior to the mid-December bid application, so everybody will know that prior to, and there's a number of other factors that will be put out there in terms of just the environmental side, the setback. So we're still working on the bid criteria. So a lot of people thought it might be just highest value, but the reality is that with the different size and scope of each of these, we wanted something that kept in mind full, maximum value for our citizens. So there's going to be a whole number of criteria there, including, like, I think we're going to have to be looking at diversity and inclusion. We're going to have to be looking at women in the industry, all these plans that should be forming a part of that. So there's a lot of different parts that flow into that, but companies will know prior to them expressing their interest.
Could that include a royalty model?
We are working on the fiscal structure right now. Absolutely, that is going to be a part of it, but I won't go any farther than to say that's actively being worked on right now.
How big could these projects be? Do you have a sense of, the scale of some of the things that these companies are going to be proposing?
I can tell you, we have had projects expressed to us that are quite small, minor. We've had some that are expressed to us that can blow your mind, that how big they propose to get. No pun intended. So again, there's a whole number of things. So you get a lot of companies that are talking about the sheer size that you need to make this economically feasible. You need to achieve a certain scale to make this work. Then there are others that are still talking about the exploration side of this. So we encourage them to bid as well, or to put their interest in now. And again, I cannot reiterate enough that this is going to be a learning process for everybody here. And if companies and proponents and citizens don't communicate with us, it's hard to get it out. And we are actively listening. What we're doing here is based on listening and looking to best practices. So we've had that advantage, knowing, how other people think. We've been hearing from companies for years. So all that has gone into what we think is the best process we can do, measuring all the factors I've talked about earlier.
Are there rules about how close a wind
Those
turbine-
will be coming.
Those are coming. Okay.
Absolutely, that will be a part of it. I mean, I've had citizens say, my God, I had this house here for X number of years. I don't want a wind tower 2 meters within that. That's something that is obviously, and will be part of the environmental process as well. So people needn't fear that won't be considered. Absolutely in the mix here, and I don't blame people for asking the question in the first place.
Minister, do you consider this the first step, or was that what you announced months ago?
It's hard to say. I guess that was more of a first aspirational step. That was letting everybody know it's real and it's coming. But when you think of it in terms of actual policy laid out in black and white, everybody on the same page, knowing the timelines, you can say this is the first step of certainty that companies have now when it comes to looking at their financing, looking at their plan, looking at what's achievable, meeting with communities, consulting with indigenous groups. Now they have a game plan to go with, as opposed to just where we hope to be.
You talked about getting feedback from companies. Are there any that wanted a model like this, or were they looking for
We've had a range of opinions given to us, ranging from first come, first serve to, we want to know what the process is before we get into this. We've certainly had other groups, and again, we've consulted with people like EcoNext or Energy NL. We've had a lot of support for where we are, but obviously there are some people that, look, if you had a Crown Land application and that's sent back now, yeah, you probably will be disappointed with me. But, again, the guiding factors here, besides making sure maximum value of the resource for people, we wanted to make sure that nobody could look at us and say you weren't fair and you didn't put it out there for everybody to be on the same playing field. That was a big thing for us to make sure. And again, we had a lot of companies say, we're ready to go, but tell us what you're going to do. And anyways, it's been interesting, but I'm very pleased with where we are, and I think we should. Again, I don't think it'll be universal support, but I certainly think people will acknowledge the fairness.
When do you think the call for bids process, like the two stages, right? When will the second stage finish?
So right now, we know October 1st is the deadline for the expressions of interest. We will then be putting out the bid round in December, mid-December 2015. Aspirationally, we should, I would say in the first quarter 2023 is when the next step would happen, when people can put their interest into us. I don't want to put a deadline on that because there's still some factors outside of our control, information being compiled. First quarter 2023, and aspirationally, we could see this moving forward, again, probably even second quarter. But there's some very big caveats to that, being an environmental assessment part, still the Cranland section here. So right now, we have given companies enough that they can start moving forward with certainty. And our goal, we know where we'd like to be, but again, this is brand new. This is new territory to us, so we're keeping that in mind.
So this is modeled substantially off of what we do offshore, but offshore for decades we pay for a lot of the upfront research. Is there, assuming we're not doing that, is there something that would allow companies that would do their own work without any guarantee of getting these lands to account for those costs?
Right now, that's not something, so we have not advised anybody to basically expend funds, whether it's in a Crown Land process, whether it's in an EA process, but we have talked to companies that want to get into wind exploration and assessing the resource, and you know, you can do that. You can try, you know, you can work with us to achieve that, but our position right now is not to subsidize that. Our position is not to fund that. We think that the interest is there, and I think that the financial commitment to do that is there. And I will say a lot of companies have already started their own processes, that they're spending their own money, and that's the way it's going to be.
And just to jump in on that point as well, I mean, during the EA process, most of the companies, if not all of the companies, use consultants or their experience that they have themselves in the industries that they're coming in, not just this industry, but every industry. And, you know, they bring forward that learnings through that process with the registration document, and that's a fulsome, hopefully a fulsome review of what they're going to be doing for the proponent wants to do in the particular area they want to do it in. So, I mean, from our standpoint, I mean, that's generally what companies do. And I think that Minister Parsons is correct. They're going to continue to do that. Some of them have already started, and some, I know some are chomping at the bit to get going at this now after today's announcement.
Mr. Davis, there's been, with this first environmental assessment process on the West Coast, there's been a lot of people saying that they feel like they don't have agency because they live in a local service district, not a municipality. Is that a concern for you going forward with these projects that you would think would happen mostly in rural Newfoundland? Probably it's not going to happen in downtown St. John's. Is that a concern for you, the lack of agency for these people, and how they're able to voice concerns in this sort of scenario? So
we have a open, transparent ability for individuals to make their representation or bring forward their ideas to the process. It's open to all people. I mean, regardless of a service district or a municipality or whatnot, they have the ability to reach out to us through the EA process, and the email is eaprojectcomments@gov.nl.ca. I encourage people to reach out, and I'm not going to speak about individual processes that are ongoing right now. On an overall arching process, that's the general terms of what we do in an EA process. People have the opportunity to engage at all levels, at all stages, which is an important piece, and it's been successful for us right across the board for all industries, and this one will be no different. And you know, I encourage people that want to be involved in the industry. As the Environment Minister, I want to see people move in this way. We want to see that happening.
I think when it comes to resource development, the reality is that you have to have community engagement, and even if an individual or an unincorporated community didn't have a right per se to stop that, that doesn't mean that you don't consult and try to work with community, because if you don't get social license, you're going to have a difficult time going anywhere. So there's obviously rules as it relates to municipalities. There are, you know, the rules as it relates to the environmental assessment. But and again, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's obviously very important, because if you try to go into an area and you have a community that doesn't want to buy in, I think you have a difficult time doing that. And we've seen successful resource development. I'm coming from Millertown last week, we're next to Valentine Lake, where they have amazing community buy-in, and it's because the proponents have come in and worked with the community. They provided economic support. More importantly, they talked to them, communicated to them. And that is a perfect example of how you can have successful resource development. In this case, obviously being brand new, there's a heck of a lot more education that comes with it for all of us. But that's one thing that we are committed to, and I think proponents, if they want to be successful, should also be committed to.
What are your thoughts on the past 15 years? You know, when people say 2007, was it a smart move to even have the moratorium prior to, you know, at that time? Was this kind of like a wait for it thing? You know, the industry will emerge.
You know what? Hindsight's a great thing. I mean, I can't put myself in the mindset of policymakers in 2007. They probably made decisions based on certain factors that were there. I can complain about them or say I wouldn't have done this or wouldn't have done that. Maybe not necessarily fair. What I do think, though, is that this is a resource that is long overdue in this province. I think nobody can question the fact that we've got this resource. It's recognized globally as being best in class. It's time for us to move forward and try to find a way to make some money, create wealth that goes into our social services, to our health care. Again, why not? It's creating jobs, it's going to contribute revenue, and I think it can have a lot of positive to it. It's renewable. So, again, I think it's a long time coming. I'm just happy that through a number of factors we're able to move it forward now, and I think we're doing so as quickly and expediently as or expeditiously as possible, but at the same time keeping in mind a necessary caution to make sure it's done right, knowing that, look, you have to realize the implication of your policy decisions are going to be around a lot longer than you are in that position. And the guiding factor I've always said is I plan to live in this province when I'm done politics. I hope my kids live here, and I hope that they can have a system put in place that was put in place for the right reasons and with strategic and sustainable goals. That's what I hope for. That's my aspiration.
You mentioned speaking with diplomats from Germany. What's
Yes.
the message from them, and are you hearing that they may be investors or signing offtake agreements before these even get off the ground?
There's a whole lot of different, and again, I'll leave it to them for to say their piece. You know, I'm not going to sort of reiterate what they've said. The biggest thing I can say is tremendous interest, quicker, like faster than even anybody anticipated. They were moving on this a long time ago. They want it quicker, and certainly they have expressed very significant amounts of the resource needed in terms of like just product, how much we're going to need. The other side too, that I think there's a technological component to this that's moving forward. Just a couple weeks ago, I saw a video of a hydrogen-powered heavy equipment, like mining equipment, completely hydrogen-powered. So companies themselves need to start investing in the actual application of this, whether it's through transit, through heavy civil, you name it. That's moving forward quickly too. But again, all I can say, there's huge potential. We plan on meeting them again. We plan on hosting them in the province here, and whatever else is necessary to hit this market. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we try to move quick, because they've said move quick. And if we don't do that, someone else will fill that void. All good? Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate this, guys.
Perfect. Everyone enjoyed a nice windy day out there.